But the first night was so good. Like, I was like 20. It was amazing. It was like really exciting.
The quality of a movie is not determined by the age you were when you watched the movie.
But isn't it though?
It's usual silly bullshit.
You know, that's not normal. No, the conversation about Gladiator, not that. Although it could be, argued. But no, I'm talking about two guys shooting YouTube videos as a team. That's not normal. That's 2 full-time jobs. And somehow most content creators are supposed to cram all of that into one job. So what do? Well, they grab an Osmo Pocket because, well, it's supposed to be simple, easy, shoot to it yourself. But I've been told by this guy, Jordan Drake, that the iPhone is actually a really good video capture tool, so why don't I just use that? Let's find out.
We're trying to do our job.
Yeah, they'll deal with it. Jumping back indoors so that I can talk to you a little bit about the stuff we're going to be covering today. The first one is probably a little bit obvious. It's the Osmo Pocket 3, and this is so popular because it's really, really good at what it does. This 1-inch sensor we're pretty familiar with. We've seen it for a few years now and we know exactly what we're getting out of it. It has really good dynamic range. It has great image quality and it's small, so it can fit in this tiny little head here. This takes great video, especially since this has log in it. But you know what else takes great video? The iPhone. The iPhone's a great camera, but you can't just use it interchangeably with the Osmo Pocket because it needs a gimbal. And for that, I've got a couple of options. I picked out 2 of the best ones that I could find right now. I'm sure there will be more, and by the time I publish this, I'm sure another one will have popped onto the market. But my points here will make sense for basically anything that you can come up with that uses an iPhone as the main camera. The first one is the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro, which shouldn't be confused with the original Flow Pro. I actually have both of those here, and what's kind of funny about these is Insta360 released this, I think, like last summer, July, something like that, in 2024, and then like not much longer, just a couple of weeks ago, this one came out, so it hasn't even been a year since the first one was announced. But if you look at these side by side, they've made some significant enhancements to this. I already really don't like this one by comparison. This is a significantly better gimbal. Looking at this thing, you can see that the main benefit right off the bat is how small it is. And I like it because you can basically do everything that you would do with the Osmo Pocket 3 with this gimbal as far as like carrying it with you. It doesn't require a very big bag, and it's pretty easy to get going. It just flips open and then immediately you're ready to go. I'm using the magnetic mount for iPhone, which is MagSafe, but it also comes with like a clamp. Not a big fan of the clamp. I like the magnetic mount because it's just so easy to snap on and go. The thing that makes this special, at least at the time I recorded this, who knows by the time this comes out if anything else has come to market, but this uses Apple Dock Kit. So what that means is they've combined Insta360's hardware and some of their software technology in their app with Apple's own software tracking. That means that this gimbal communicates directly with the iPhone. That's different than basically any other gimbal out there, in that the gimbal has to have its own tracking or its own way of managing what it's looking at. Well, with this one, it's actually going to look to Apple to tell it what to do. One thing that is a little bit of an irritation is that one of the ways that I would like to activate tracking with something like this is using gesture controls, which the app supports. Unfortunately, gesture controls don't work if you're shooting in log, and I'm not going to use the iPhone if I'm not shooting in log because the quality of the video is significantly worse, in my opinion. That's fine. You can still activate tracking by holding down on the trigger, and I can do that even if the screen of the iPhone is facing away from me. If you are dead set on gesture control, well, then the home makes more sense. Home? This gets around that by allowing gesture control regardless of what the iPhone's doing, because it has its own camera and its own controller and its own screen that links with that camera. There are pros and cons to this. The pro is that it can do anything it wants to that it can handle on its own without needing to rely on the iPhone's throughput. The downside of that is it's not actually talking to the iPhone during capture. So even if I'm in focus on this controller, I don't know if the camera is actually in focus. It usually does a pretty good job, and in the Blackmagic app that I've been using for most of my capture, as well as just the main camera app that comes with the iPhone, it's usually pretty good at locking onto a subject. It's just not going to be as reliable as something like either the Osmo Pocket or the Insta360. Still, when it comes to iPhone, this is the only solution that I've found so far that gives you a way to actually monitor yourself, since you can't do that if you're shooting yourself with iPhone because the screen's facing the other way. You want to use the best cameras, you can't see what you're shooting. This has a way around that because it'll show you what you're shooting, kinda. I'll get more into that later. that's the biggest plus side of this. The biggest downside should be obvious. This gimbal is enormous. Like, sure, it's bigger than it needs to be right now because I've got this little handle on here. This is still very big. Another benefit, at least compared to the Insta360, is that it's not reliant on just iPhone. This Insta360 only works with iPhone because it's so reliant on DotKit. This, because it's using its own camera and it's got this regular clamp, really can put anything in here. Before we go back out to the field and do some testing, what I'll say is, I think that this is a little bit overcomplicated. Like, there's a lot of controls on here, and they aren't necessary. For example, you look at this dial here. What do you think the default for this dial is? Yeah, it's a light that you can change the color temperature of. So that's what we're looking at today. These two gimbals and an iPhone versus an Osmo Pocket 3. Theoretically, the video quality should be great with the iPhone, and using one of these gimbals should make it basically operate like an Osmo Pocket 3, right?
So obviously what makes this thing so popular is because it's so small and it has a little screen on it so you can actually see what you're shooting. When in contrast with like the Insta360 Flow 2 Pro, which I'm using right now to shoot this video, I can't actually see what my phone is capturing. I do get a handy little mirror on the back where I hope I'm sort of in the frame that I'm imagining, but I don't really know. That's sort of where this other gimbal from Hohem does make a difference. You do get the little screen, but that also isn't exactly what you're shooting. It's just another camera on there that gives you the angle. You really can't beat exactly what you're shooting being captured on the Osmo Pocket. I feel like I should point out that it's not super straightforward to get the Hohem iSteady M7 out and like ready to go. So let me show you. So when you first get one of these things, you have to unlock it because when you're traveling, you don't want it to like flop everywhere. Well, it's got a lock here for this part, it's got a lock here for this part, and it's got a lock here for that part. And all of these have to be unlocked or else it will start yelling at you in a really loud beep, and then the motor will cease functioning correctly and it'll wait for you to fix it, and it can be frustrating. But just have to remember, there's like 3 parts of this thing you have to unlock in order for it to start working correctly. Switching over to the Osmo Pocket so I can show you these two gimbals next to me, I kind of want to make this point. These seem like they're more designed to be better at shooting what's in front of me than what's necessarily me. That's especially the case of the Insta360. The Hohem is better because it has an actual camera, and this camera sits on the top of the gimbal and faces whichever direction you want. You could have it face you, or you can flip it around and face the other way. I don't know why you'd want to do it that way. I guess if you were trying to track someone else and you weren't confident in your own ability to use the gimbal controls, sure, that would work. But mainly, it's for shooting yourself. And I do like that that this is detachable, and I can walk around and actually see myself and actually tell it to track me if I feel like it's lost its focus. That said, it's still not the camera that I'm shooting with. It's still not the exact, it's too wide. It doesn't actually show me exactly what I'm shooting. All 3 of these systems offer an easy way to use them when you set them down. Pocket 3 that I have here, that I'm shooting with now, has a optional attachment that sits on the bottom, clips right into the USB-C port, and clips onto the sides, and there you go. You got a perfect little stand. The Insta360 and the Hohem also have a similar thing. The Hohem has a screw-on tripod mount on the bottom, so you could actually put this on a monopod or tripod if you wanted to. That's something you can't do with the Pocket. You can do it with both of these. They both have 1/4-20 underneath. But I'm not really interested in carrying that much stuff. I'm only going to carry what they've got attached to them. That's why I think the Insta360 is actually the best of these 3 options, since the tripod feet fold directly into the handle like this and immediately stow away. And that way, it's not an extra piece. Both the Osmo Pocket and the Hohem is an extra piece. This is the most convenient of the 3. Another area where both these stabilizers do a better job than the Osmo Pocket is the fact that they telescope. This extends, this extends. That means I don't have to find a surface that is exactly the right height that makes me comfortable with the frame of view. Here, right now, on this picnic table, I feel like this shot's kind of low. I'd like it a little higher, but since I'm using the Osmo Pocket, I can't, so I sort of have to just hunch. When you're shooting yourself, one of the most important things that you could possibly have is the ability to track. That way, you don't have to make sure you're always in the exact same spot, and you can move. Oh, dynamic. Well, all 3 of these tools offer tracking in some way. Let's see which one does it best. So first, let's talk about how tracking works. For the Osmo Pocket, it's using its own camera tracking system, all DJI developed. It's not DJI's most advanced version, since this product is actually a little bit old now. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen a new Osmo Pocket considering how popular this thing is. That said, the tracking is pretty darn good. I haven't had a major problem with it. I do know that it can drift at times, and sometimes it can be difficult to acquire the initial track, but once it's on, I've had no issue with it. Hoems uses this camera on the side here to track the subject using its own internal algorithms as well. It seems pretty much in line with what I've come to expect from basic tracking programs, and it's pretty good. If it loses you in any way, it'll try and reacquire you, and I actually stepped behind someone in an attempt for it to lose me, and it really tried quite hard to continue to find little bits of me to continue to track me. I would say it's very good. I wouldn't say it's necessarily better, simply since the iPhone that you're attaching to it is what's actually going to decide what's in focus in the shot. And since this doesn't have a way to actually tell the iPhone what to do, you might find that you'll drift a bit more frequently. That brings us to the Insta360 solution, which I think is the most elegant. See, Insta360 does have their own tracking algorithms, which means you should use their app if you can. You're gonna get the best tracking that way. However, they're using Apple DocKit. What that means is they're plugging directly into the iPhone's tracking capabilities that Apple has developed. So that's a software and hardware solution that is Apple made, and then it uses that to move the gimbal and track a subject. It's extremely accurate. It's my favorite of this group, and it's just a shame that this doesn't have a screen on it, or this would basically be no contest. So of course, you can't do filmmaking without some accessories, and that goes for all three of these. You see, I like shooting in log because I like having more dynamic range. I like being able to color grade. In order to do that though, I can't shoot in the middle of the day and expect to get my shot. So I need variable neutral density filters, or just neutral density filters. With the iPhone, that's not easy. I don't know if you've seen this, but Jordan has for years been struggling to get neutral density filters for the iPhone when we do new launches. It's because the whole case changes and then you can't use the same accessories. Now that it's after launch and we had some more time, you can get them now. So in order to do that, let's take a look at my iPhone right now. I'm using a moment case, and these moment cases have special threading for lenses and accessories. Great. I just don't really like using these as my everyday cases, mostly because these little things here that you can use to attach stuff love collecting dust, and it just looks kind of gross. That means I need a separate case for when I want to use this for creative filmmaking than from the one I just use regularly. That said, it is really nice to be able to just pull out a moment ND filter like this one and just clip it on. It works really well, but it does feel a little fragile. I'm sort of scared I'm going to break it. And especially when it's on something like an iPhone that I'm so used to setting down, I really have to catch myself to make sure that I'm not scraping this piece of glass across whatever table I'm setting it on. For the Osmo Pocket, you sort of really only have one solution, and that's these little magnetic clip-on ones that DJI sells. I'm using one right now, the ND16. These work really well, they snap right on, and they look great. Just don't set this whole system down on a magnetic surface. I made the mistake of doing that. The magnets in these are surprisingly strong, and that thing flipped off and stuck itself to a newspaper holder, and I had a heck of a time getting it off. Okay, but what if you don't like log? That's fine. Some people don't want to grade their footage. I get that. Often, I find that it's a tedious step that maybe I should avoid. But if you're shooting on iPhone, you don't have a choice. You see, you don't have a choice if you want your footage to not look like it was taken on a smartphone. The iPhone takes great video in log. That's it. If you decide to use the standard profile, it looks kind of crunchy and bad. I don't think that's the case here with the Osmo Pocket. I think the Osmo Pocket makes pretty darn good standard looking footage. Here, let's take a look at some scenes here. One I shot in log, one that I didn't. And quite honestly, I'm happy with both. That's a bit of flexibility that I have in case I forget those accessories that I mentioned. Well, I can still make a video with the Osmo, when on the iPhone, I basically just have to phone it in because it's not going to look very good. I'm not going to feel great about it, and it's not something that I'm going to want to publish. Something else worth mentioning, and probably the most important part of making a video, is audio. And well, the iPhone is a little bit wonky. I intended to shoot this video using a mixture of audio from a Rode microphone, the Micro, which sticks into the USB-C port of the phone and then supposedly lets you use those microphones as audio, but it didn't work. So I'm only using the one that DJI makes and pairs with the Osmo. And the best part about that is how quickly it pairs. If you get one of these, you turn it on and it senses an Osmo nearby, it just syncs up immediately, gives you audio. I can see levels on my screen right now. Fantastic. I will say, avoid the lav that you can get with this. It's like $35. It's not very good. That capsule's crummy. Just use it bare like this. It's better.
Hey Jordan, this DJI Pocket that I've got in my hand here.
Yeah, one of the world's most popular cameras.
Yeah. Why didn't you review this?
Yeah, at the time I was like, you know, no one really cared about the Pocket 2, and this is a dramatically better camera in every way, and like one of the most popular cameras in the world, and it's honestly one of the most egregious mistakes I've made since starting at PetaPixel. What were you saying?
Nothing, that was perfect.
This guy will take it for you.
Do you want a photo? I'll take your picture. No? Don't want to remember it. Moving on. At the start of this video, I posed the question, if the iPhone is so good at capturing really nice footage, why would I need an Osmo Pocket 3? Well, let's dissect that. The reason being, it's just not a really good experience shooting with the iPhone. No matter how many accessories I get for it, I just don't ever feel like it's that fun of an experience. You'll notice that through most of this video, I'm shooting on the Osmo Pocket 3, and that's mainly because it was easy. If I saw a shot I wanted, it was an immediate flip up out of my bag, flip the screen, turn the camera around, and there we go, I'm capturing. With the iPhone, it's like, all right, let me get the gimbal out, let me get the magnetic mount on there, let me slap it on there, let me unhitch all of these little locks on the thing, let me set it down, okay, now I can get the shot. It's just too much work. Jordan agrees with me. While we do both say that the footage that the iPhone can capture is gorgeous, using it to actually work is just the worst. I think if you get all the right parts together, you make sure that you're constantly shooting, that you don't ever have to put anything away and take it back out again, that you have all the accessories you need, and your audio is working perfectly, which, as mentioned earlier, it didn't for me. Sure, I think you can get absolutely great stuff for it, and quite honestly, it's probably cheaper. The gimbals are much cheaper than the Osmo Pocket 3, and you probably already have an iPhone. That's really the selling point. But if you're gonna be a solo content creator, and you wanna make footage that looks good in places that aren't your studio, I mean, shoot outside, go outside, venture into the world, it's beautiful. If you do that, well, the iPhone starts to make less and less sense. Sure, use it for capturing quick grabs and shots of little things really fast that you can just whip it out and maybe get it. But for a dedicated video, Osmo Pocket all the way, man. Make sure you check out the PetaPixel podcast. I host it along with Chris Niccolls and Jordan Drake every week. You can catch it on this exact YouTube channel or on all of your favorite podcasting apps. And hey, check out our merch. We've got really cool sweatshirts, and we're adding some new t-shirts soon too. In fact, if you look real carefully, Jordan's been wearing it. That's all I have for this week. See you in the next one.